Yeah.
I feel like the meat. I feel like the meat of the show is probably going to be talking about the different terrain and the way that it impacts games.
Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of Spellstorm Miniatures. My name is Jeremiah.
I'm Dan.
And this is Chad.
And we are a podcast dedicated to miniature wargaming, including War Machine and Hordes by Privateer Press. Our goal here is to inspire you to play more. And I think we're actually going to achieve that goal today because today the hot topic is the new Steamroller packet. 2021 has been announced, or at least some of the changes have been announced. The actual packet doesn't get released until June or late June. But today we're going to talk about some of those changes. And can you believe it? We've got opinions. So,
yeah. The Steamroller packet started CID testing last week. So week one, I think week two will probably be getting announced here very shortly. So that's what it is that we're going to be talking about. So these are the proposed changes to the Steamroller packet from the previous year. So some of them could stick, some of them could still change before the packet officially gets released, I believe, at the end of June or this summer. So that's what it is that we're going to be talking about.
Yep. As we talk about the Steamroller CID, I'm going to have a link in the show notes, and so you can click that link and follow along as we talk. So, hey, let's talk about games that we have played. Have you played any games lately?
This is where the shame comes in. We're dedicated to playing miniature games, and I haven't played any miniature games.
Yeah.
Well, that might change. I might join that online tournament, Tide and Skull or whatever. I'm debating on it. I have a couple more days to decide to join in. Totally a Shark Tank that I'll probably get chewed up in, but at least I get to play something.
Hey, a shark's got to eat, man.
Yeah.
I unfortunately have not played any miniatures games. I've been thinking more about playing games. One of our,
I think that counts, right?
Yeah, right. One of our buddies in our circle of friends that has been coming over and gaming during this came over, played some Rock Band, and then we played a couple games of Commander Saturday. Now that my work schedule has changed and I have weekends off, which is weird. And then Sunday I didn't do much. I did some painting and stuff. Friday night and Saturday. I'll talk about that later.
Nice. Yeah. Since our last recording, I went or tried to go on vacation. Kind of took vacation, I guess. I don't know. In my line of work, vacation is a weird thing because I still ended up working in my vacation. But so I haven't gotten much gaming in because I was trying to dedicate that time because of my anniversary and stuff to the wife and to the family and stuff like that. But the only games that we've been really ever playing is Flesh and Blood. So that card game. Oz and I've been playing a fair amount of the Blitz format, and we're having fun doing that. So, and I finally beat him yesterday, and he was a little upset about it. And so the second game, I was winning. I had him down to 1 life, and he did this magic thing that killed me. So a nice come from behind win from him on the second game yesterday, but he was mad the whole time because it wasn't his day, and then he couldn't even rejoice when he beat me. But
he's a Sith.
Yeah.
You.
It's a fun game. It's fresh. I love it. And so we've been diving in slowly. So we'll roll into the store and we'll buy a couple packs at a time of each set, and then we'll take it home, and we split the classes, but then we keep whatever general stuff we pull. So that's how we've been dividing it up, and it's been fair and equitable. It's been nice. So yeah. So yeah, good on us playing miniatures. Hey. But we have an exciting topic today. We have a good topic today, and I think, and I'm just going to put this out in the very beginning. I think that with the announcement of the Steamroller CID beginning, and with the announcement that the packet's going to get finalized, I feel like maybe we're making the turn, and our community is starting to begin maybe get hopeful again about games and things like that. So that's what I'm holding out for. I'm holding out for hope. But what we want to do is we want to talk about the changes that are announced, right? And I think we divided it up into like 3 sections, and we want to begin with objectives, right?
Yes.
So my understanding is 3 objectives are being dropped and 3 are being added, or at least 1 is, or no, 2 are being dropped, 2 are being added, 1 is being changed. So
yeah,
am I right? Okay, so the 2 being dropped are stockpile and treasure chest. So stockpile was the one that
gave free charges, I think.
Yeah, and then the treasure chest was
it's kind of a mix. One was the
luck roll.
The luck roll, yeah. And then so those are going away. We're not going to be able to have those, but we can get other things that are going to help us in our games. So why don't you guys, one of you tell us about the 2 that are being added, and we'll talk about the changed one third.
Yeah, so I mean, one of them we have up, which is Shrine. So this one's going to be giving Ward of Protection. So basically during the control phase, you choose 1 friendly faction model within 4 inches of the model, and then they get Aegis, which, why they just couldn't say immune to continuous effects. Now you got to remember a new term, Aegis, because I don't think that's been in War Machine boards, has it? I think it's in...
I'm not sure if it has or not. I feel like it's a term for the Paladins of Protectorate.
Okay, because it makes me think about it as like Aegis from Warcaster. But so basically, Shrine's going to give you immune to continuous effects, which I mean is nice. It does definitely have some effects. Continuous effects being such as like burning, right? Acid. So it could be kind of good, I guess, depending on what you're going to give it to. Maybe if you're playing into Protectorate, since you bring them up, not worth their fire as much. Or for me, I've kind of been like, well, I've already got trolls in the stone, so I have a nice stone aura that basically gives me no continuous effects anyway. I mean, so personally, I'm not going to see myself, I think, taking this one as much compared to some of the others as we get into them. But I can definitely see some good effects for if you need to run through like burning earth or a burning cloud or an acid pool or some other stuff that you have Pathfinder, but you don't have ways to get through that. Now, granted, it is only 1 friendly faction model, so probably just going on your solos, I would imagine, or maybe your caster to get in a certain spot.
Yeah.
And most of those guys may not worry about 1 acid damage as much, but that fire damage could be something that bites you on the next turn for sure.
Yeah. The other thing that's important to note about it is that when you gain the Aegis ability, if you were already suffering from a continuous effect, it expires. I don't know if that's always true for the other. I assume it's probably true for the Krill Stone, but it's been a while.
But this one gets you in the control phase.
To clarify that.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Because what if you're like guys on 1 last health and he's acid? You hit him with this and it takes it off. With the stone, I would already go through rolling for it or not, right? Or maybe someone's on fire. So that's a good point where if you're close, but you also now got to be within 4 inches of it. So that has to be good planning. But
I also wanted to affirm you, Chad. Did a quick little search. Aegis is a keyword that already exists. The attendant priest has it as one of its prayers.
Okay, that's what it was.
So, models in this unit are immune to continuous effects for 1 round. And what the objective does, Shrine, is it adds that, removes what was already on it. So it's even slightly better. So good memory, good call.
Yeah. I knew it sounded protectorate-y. Yeah, I don't, as a circle player, there's not a huge amount of stuff that has immunities to different elements and things like that. But I feel like with the low armor, I don't get stuck with continuous effects very often because I usually die from the initial attack anyway. But I could see it being a little handy to, if there's a heavy that I have that's on fire. A lot of the heavies, especially the living heavies for Circle, are lower armor. Those Arm 17 Warp Wolves don't. I mean, you're probably okay from a Power 12 fire roll if it doesn't go out. It's probably not doing a lot of damage, but I feel like that's bit me in the butt more times than it hasn't, or at least it sticks out a lot more. Of like somebody like, okay, your dice off 5 on this fire roll. Cool, I rolled a 10, take 5 points of damage to an important branch. That now it's crippled. Awesome. Yep. I feel like that's just happened more times than it hasn't. Or some of the solos that are important that maybe did survive the blast damage and are now set on fire. You can potentially save them again if you're within 4. It's very situational, but a lot of the objective things are very situational like that. So I have not been playing any games since the rise of the Blight Archons and the new acid centric blight models in Legion, so I don't know if it's potentially could make a difference against that, or I don't know if there's been a rise in a lot of fire continuous effects in other factions, again, because we haven't really been playing very much, so could be a good corner case utility piece. The advantage of it is you still get to pick your objective at the start of the game after you see what you're playing against. So you could, at the last minute, pick this instead of something else.
That's right. Hey, let's talk about the something else. The other new one is Wreckage. Dan, do you have the language for that one?
Yes. So this one provides shelter. During your control phase, choose one friendly faction within 4 inches of this model. It's pretty typical on all these. That model gains concealment for 1 round. So, which again is kind of a nice way to give a little extra boost to defense. Gives you that +2, or if you have Prowl, now it should activate Stealth. Yeah. So you can kind of run around midfield. And my guess is most of the language on these is you don't have to stay within that 4 inches. You just have to be within 4 inches
to gain the ability.
Gain the ability, and then you can go run off and do whatever.
Yeah.
So this could definitely be good for all sorts of abilities, right?
Yeah.
I can see a lot of good uses for this, again, especially again going back to the trolls. There's quite a few Prowl models right now that could benefit greatly. That I don't have to worry about going into the terrain, or I can command my placement a little bit better after I'm within this 4 inches, and I can go run off with my bears or something like that into a crazy position. And again, 1 friendly faction model. And so it's just a great little defensive one. I can see myself picking this one up for a few games to definitely give it a good try.
Yeah. Well, I think this is also a really interesting one. So most of the time, the objectives are pretty central in the middle of the deployment area, kind of your zones. And so a lot of times it usually ends up hitting support models or like heavies or things like that are kind of in the center of your army waiting to punch out. However, one of the scenarios we'll go over later is the split decision scenario where the objectives are actually on the very far flank of the board. And I think this could be a really great utility piece because it's also very close to the flag at that side of the board to be able to give a model that's on the flag concealment and potentially triggering Prowl and making it harder to remove a model from a flag, or to protect a model maybe that is coming on the flank trying to get around to the backside of an army, or maybe something that ambushed off of the side, giving something concealment as they move into position. I think it's a really cool thing. I think this is basically going to be a must take for Wormwood players in Circle, because the tree has Prowl, and usually you're playing a unit of Swamp Goblin Bellows crew, but this frees up the Bellows crew to either be out of position for 1 turn, or to maybe move into position preemptively on the next turn, and still give Wormwood Prowl, which is very, very important because he's a very big target. He doesn't want to get shot at.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think there's also a number of other like troll. There's a couple of troll warlocks that have Prowl, don't they? Doesn't Jarl have Prowl?
Yeah, I don't know if Jarl actually has Prowl, but they can definitely enjoy the concealment for sure. That extra +2 defense from range can be absolutely huge.
Yeah. Well, throw this on Calandra, who has Bullet Dodger, and then suddenly she's like defense 18. Like that's nothing to to ignore. That's pretty. It's pretty good.
Right. I mean, then you get all sorts of like D-cell casters could just make it a little bit harder. I mean, it definitely. There's an overall theme I feel that is as we go further through, that is definitely attacking. I think gun lines or range centric lists. This is kind of bringing us a little bit again to some
small reprieve.
Yeah, exactly. Some melee focus type stuff going on.
Yeah.
So
the third change in the objectives is Armory, and I want to talk about this one as a former Khador player.
Yeah.
When I was playing Khador, there was a lot of weird things going on that I didn't have a lot of answers for in some of my lists. Didn't have magic attacks, and I had very few sources of it. And so Armory was actually one that I took a lot. And so the change now says this: during your control phase, choose one friendly faction model within 4 inches of this model and one of its weapons. That model gains damage type magical for 1 round. And what I love about this is if I, gave previously it used to be just your next attack. And so you can walk up and swing and whiff, or you can have a jack fully loaded, right? And you can walk up and swing, and then sure you hit, but you only get one good, one attack or whatever. And then you just kind of stand there and going, And so now you have since you get to choose a weapon, if you have the ability to attack multiple times, that weapon retains the magical damage type for that round. And so for each repeated use. And I just feel like that's really good. I think it's more helpful. So
yeah,
definitely.
I think there's some good potential in there. This is one I see might change through CID. Is my thought is maybe they'll just, I don't know. It's hard because it's like the one weapon. Lots of models have more than one weapon. Or are they going to keep it at one weapon? Is that going to be powerful enough, or is all weapons too powerful? Right. So I'm wondering how that one will.
I think all weapons is too powerful, especially for something that has like some of the larger models that are gun platforms, like a Stormwall comes to mind.
Yeah.
Stormwall can output a lot of gunshots in a single round, and you can still give it magical weapons if you're taking Ion and Holt. But then you're sinking points in and a bunch of other things. I think leaving it at one weapon, I think, is probably strong enough. One of the points that they called out is like, is this too strong against things like the Wraith engine in Crix?
Yeah.
I think it has that potential of being a little bit too tipping the scales a little bit too much, because I can tell you that a souped up Warpwolf Stalker doesn't care if it only gets it on one weapon. If his one weapon is its sword that is already stronger than the other weapon, it can do a lot of damage to something. Like, it can very easily one round a Wraith engine that it couldn't normally really attack very easily before. So that's the question is, like, for Jax, it's probably a little bit more balanced that it's only on one weapon because they have a limited number of attacks usually. I think on War Beasts is where you're going to see it be a little bit more imbalanced because of the nature of Fury and the ability to keep buying attacks, some of the access that we have to free charges, especially in Circle. Like, a Hunter's Mark that thing. Okay, cool. Now I get a free charge. My Warpwolf Stalker gets an initial sword attack plus 4 more sword attacks. Like, that's 5 sword attacks, and if I'm only warping for strength with no other buffers, that's 5 attacks at pound 19 against something that would normally be protected because it's incorporeal. And
Yeah.
five attacks of pound 19 will probably kill a Wraith Engine. And that's not assuming that I don't have something else to throw on it, which almost always happens.
That's a good point.
But
I mean, like bomber chucking out back Louise.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like I feel like this is a really great change for some of the War Machine factions that don't really have as easy access and have limited ways to reach out and touch you from a range, and where they need that incorporeal, that way to deal with an incorporeal model. But I worry that it's going to be a little bit too powerful for the melee uses on the Horde side, especially in like Trolls, where your Mauler, your Mauler's Fury 5.
Oh, people don't take Maulers anymore. It's all about the Pyro Troll. You're fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Brawlers.
Yeah.
Yes, but exactly.
I think it's a great change, but I think they're going to keep a very close eye on it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point on that one. So
yeah. Now the other three, fuel cache, dugout, and observatory, are staying the same. And I think it's important to note before we leave the objective section of our podcast is that the changes to the scenarios, they are all going to have objectives now.
Yes.
And so keeping an eye and paying attention to these is important. There's been a lot of games where Oz and I don't even pay attention, and we just go, I'm going to take the healing one, and like, and so it's like, and so now it's part of your list construction and part of knowing your opponent's force is where am I going to need some help in this battle, in this matchup, and so I think it'd be important for everyone. Like for me, I print my cards out, because I like having the tactile when I play. I think I'm just going to print this page and cut them up and then put them in plastic sleeves and just have it on the table every time. Because like Treasure Chest, I never remembered my extra roll or my reroll, and so this is just things you can do to remember what your guys can do. So
get in the habit of using a token to indicate it.
Yeah.
3D printer. Just print them
right.
up.
So the next section we're going to talk about is probably going to be the bulk of the discussion. I think a lot, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about with the new introduction of different terrain features. So with this packet, they introduced 5 new terrain features. They are Crater, Quickstand, Open Grave, Tall Grass, and Windstorm. So some of them are just like 2 of them, Crater and Open Grave, are kind of ways to replace the trench templates with different things, which some stores or some local areas I think had already done similar things like this before, but these just kind of make them official. Quicksand is a new hazard, Tall Grass is a new concealment option, and Windstorm is a new, very unique terrain feature to help melee-centric armies against ranged heavy armies. So the first one, Crater, is treated as a trench template, except that it is irregularly shaped and often circular. Trenches should be no larger than 5 inches in diameter. Unlike trenches, though, craters cannot be placed in contact with other craters and must follow the normal rules for restricted terrain. So restricted terrain is that it can't be within 3 inches of another piece of restricted terrain. Trench templates were allowed to break this rule because it's, it makes a sense that you don't just build one trench on a battlefield, you probably build a couple of them next to each other. And it created kind of weird pieces of scenario that were like really big sections where you could pop an entire unit or like a couple of heavies into a trench. But
according to the
you couldn't get a huge base.
Steamroller, it's actually 2 inches.
Oh, 2 inches. Okay, I apologize. Within 2 inches of another piece. Maybe that changed. I think it used to be 3, but I think this is an interesting piece. Just another option for trenches. That the idea is kind of that it fits a little bit more thematically with like a blasted battlefield themed table, where like you're not really going to have trenches, or you're not going to have trenches all over the place, but you could have a couple of craters from that victor shelling the table before the battlefield, or on the battlefield before the battle.
Which the victor can lay trench templates or crater templates, right? for a round, right? So yeah, that one makes really good sense. Like I said, I like the idea that it adds a little bit more thematic and mixes up the terrain a little bit. Not to mention, these ones can be real easy terrain to add, as you can just flip over a forest if you want any regular shape, or you could use just a circular AoE template or something like that. So it's a real easy feature to add into your terrain without having to go buy new terrain or make something else, right? You can just literally flip over a piece of terrain and there you go. There's your trench.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything too special else about the trench to really dive into. Like I said, it's just a different shape, or a crater, sorry. It's just a different shaped trench.
Yeah. So the next one that is kind of similar is the open grave. So an open grave is treated as a trench template, except that it is smaller. An open grave trench template is exactly 2 inches by 3 inches. An open grave can be placed within 1 inch of each other, regardless of terrain placement restrictions. Open graves should be placed by the EO in clusters. Count 2 to 4 open graves is a single terrain feature when determining how much terrain has been placed on the table, and it's unrestricted. So you can have these all over the table. You can have an entire table of open graves. I think this is another good option. I think this is another good, interesting way to create unique terrain pockets on the table as people are getting across the battlefield, which as a former EO, that was always something I tried to do whenever I was initially setting up tables. Is I don't want the roll to always determine, I just need to win this roll so that I can go first, because going first is better. I wanted the terrain to be unique. I wanted which side of the table you're starting from to be an important decision. And it bothered me very greatly when people decided that they didn't like the way that the terrain had been set up because they felt like it was imbalanced and then changed it. I actually had that happen at an event at a top table where they decided that they didn't like the way that I placed a forest next to a flag, and they changed it. And they came back by and saw the change and asked them why they did it. And they said, "Oh, well, we felt like it was imbalanced or it wasn't placed correctly." I said, "No, I did that on purpose. Next time I set a table for you, don't change the terrain." And it was very frustrating because I specifically did it so that the side of the table choice was an important decision. I think this is an interesting way, again, to create some more trench templates, to create safety for key models instead of maybe heavies, because you won't fit them well. I think you can.
It's 2 inches, so you're fitting just in, because 50 millimeters is like 1.9 inches, somewhere in there.
It's just under 2 inches. That's right. I remember reading the over thing about it. Is like, in a single one of them, you can fit any of the small, medium, or large, or you can fit 3 smalls into it in a little cluster, which I think is pretty cool.
I mean, that's a big open grave, just saying. But yeah,
I mean, that's the point of an open grave, is it's not a personalized space.
Built for the big boys. But yeah, and this one is definitely kind of more interesting because, like you said, having those clusters is kind of a neat idea where let's say you do have a 5-person unit of mediums, and you could have 3 or 4 of them in those graves, but then you got a couple sticking out. So it gives some interesting clustering up, or your small bases, maybe they all cram in there. And so it's a neat little way, again, to spice that flavor of trenches and just change it a little bit.
Yeah.
So
what do you think, Jeremiah?
Honestly, I'm thinking about the one Halloween scenario. From a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And how much fun that was, and way back in the day, like way back in the day when we were playing HeroClix, there was like a mausoleum map that had open graves where you could hide models in and stuff. and it was exciting. And so I'm looking at Open Grave, and I'm thinking to myself that this is something that I would use a lot, probably.
Yeah.
So,
I think and I think also from not a steamroller perspective, I think you could do some really interesting things with creating your own themed scenario.
yeah,
Actually, bringing that up gave me this idea is like, this does open potential with these defined types of terrain for making some um, very unique scenario interactions for a thematic scenario later. So, like maybe when they
yeah,
do the Halloween one again, the Harvest, maybe you put open graves out on the table, and at some point you roll for a chance of like undead models to get resurrected and come out of there
yes,
and start attacking nearby models or stuff. Or like
yes,
if you're near an open grave, if you get destroyed by something near an open grave, maybe your body goes into the grave and like it doesn't produce a corpse token or something like that. Like I think that's really cool, and I think that's
yeah,
a cool option to explore for people who don't always like. Primarily, the SR packet is meant for terrain, or sorry, not terrain. It's meant for tournament purposes, but all of these things do still technically apply to like just open play games or
yeah,
friend like fun local events that you could do. You could spice things up yourself if you wanted to.
yeah. I'm definitely going to have to get a new map because I don't have like a hillside map. I've got
Okay.
like the War Machine city terrain thing, like the road thing,
Yeah.
and I've got the Legion icy wasteland and stuff. So I'm gonna have to give myself another 4x4 map. I
Yeah.
might look at something that Maps by Mars does, um, and see if I can, because I want to create this. And I've got some 3D terrain that I use for
Yep.
Frostgrave, like to create mausoleum and stuff. So
Yeah.
you already have you can have below ground things with the open grave. You can have above ground things with like tombstones that
Yeah.
it can act as like a wall. The rules for the wall,
Yep.
Yeah.
and mausoleum is a line of sight blocking building terrain, and just oh yeah, I'm already imagining this fantastic theme board. This is probably my new favorite addition. I think is
Or
this one.
maybe you fall into the open grave that's dug pretty deep and you land in the crypt below the mausoleum.
Heyo. That opens
So
up a whole
the
nother thing. Have like a board
yeah,
off to the side for when that happens.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
like
that'd be super
transported
cool.
onto a new map.
That'd be crazy. So the next one we're going to go over is going to be the quicksand, which is a new hazard. Hazards got introduced in one of the more recent steamroller packets. I think a couple of years ago, I don't remember now, as the burning earth or the acid pools. They were already things that some people, I think, had tried to kind of start doing, and I think adding another one is kind of interesting, especially because this one is very unique. So
Mhm.
quicksand is a hazardous rough terrain that is represented by a 3, 4, or 5-inch AoE template. Models lose and cannot gain Pathfinder while within the
Wow.
quicksand, and models become knocked down while within the quicksand and suffer, or sorry, models that become knocked down while within the quicksand suffer 1 point of damage. It is restricted hazard terrain, so you cannot, put a whole bunch of them. Can't make a giant pool of quicksand around a flag to make it hard to get to, but you definitely can kind of string a couple of them along in a line 2 inches apart if you wanted to. But this one's very unique because this is the first terrain feature I think that we've seen that actually that Pathfinder doesn't get to ignore, which is
Yeah.
pretty important. It's a very key thing. I feel like you can see this become. I can see this one getting used a lot more because Pathfinder is so abundant, especially with there's a lot of factions that have pretty easy access to it. Circle basically almost the entire faction has it, so we like almost never care about terrain, and people always complain about how much Circle doesn't care about that. At least in my experience as a Circle player. I think this is a really interesting piece that stops everyone unless you are incorporeal or flying, which there are a handful of, Legion has a lot of flying. There's flying in some other factions. Also, with the introduction of Aurora 2 and the
Yep.
reworking of Aurora 1, giving things flying on a stick is pretty interesting. So this obviously doesn't affect them unless you can knock them down. But I think it's really interesting as a hazard choice to make unique channels on the table. So I'm excited to like implement this on a desert table that to make things a little interesting.
Yeah. No, I definitely like, and I like the idea too, where with flying, usually a lot of the trick was, right, I'm going to hide on this side of the forest or on this side of the building, and then I'm just going to fly over with my walk speed, right?
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're on the other side. This, at least you can see over it. It's not blocking that line of sight.
Yeah.
So you can't just stand on the other side going, ha ha, you know, then, or incorporeal doing their thing, right? You actually kind of have to find ways to protect them or play around. So yeah, I definitely think it's an interesting one that will see some play. Now I'm a little sad because I don't have a bunch of incorporeal or flying controls. So
there's no flying trolls. What?
I know. Well, yeah. So it's kind of
they can make rocks fly, but they can't make themselves fly. Come on, trolls! Try harder. Try harder with your earth magic.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to play around, right?
Yeah. What do you think, Jeremiah, as a Scorn player that has access to some troll or some flying, a Legion player who has access to a lot of flying, and a newly Signar player with access to Dreyfus 2 when he comes out has flying.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm not really a Signar player. I picked up the Signar stuff to play in Strange Bedfellows.
Okay.
I've just been playing Signar during this
Brawl
last
Machine.
year I'm lazy, so
in Brawl Machine almost exclusively.
Yeah. So no, I've been playing 75-point lists lately. Last few have been 75-point lists. So
you are a Signar player.
I guess I am, but I can only do. I have Maddox, and I guess I have Haley too somewhere. I just don't know where she is right now. I'm gonna look at Quicksand, and and I feel like if I were a Protectorate player, I would want to see Quicksand and I would want to see it on the other side of the table, just so I could feel more level, because like Protector doesn't have a lot of access to to Pathfinder, and they and so anybody with Pathfinder can dance around the terrain around Protectorate easier, and so as a Protectorate player, this I imagine I would this probably makes me happy, so long as it's not on my side of the table, but I don't know. I think it does something because it takes something away. And that's an intriguing design choice, and I think that it's important that we have design choices that add things and then design choices that take away, and so I'm fine.
Yeah, it's also a unique one where I think it's the first time in a long time that we have a terrain feature that affects you in a harmful way when you become knocked down. Because the rule for water used to be that if a warjack got knocked down in water, the boiler went out, and then your warcaster had to go back over and reignite it and get them to stand back up. So it used to be a very common tactic to take something with two open hands, go over to a warjack, and just chuck them into water. Nice. To deal with them. If you couldn't, that was a common way to kill or to deal with clamjacks in Khador, because armor 25 is really hard to deal with. It used to be really hard to deal with for a lot of factions, and they weren't immovable before. So you could just grab them and huck them into some water and be like, all right, I'll deal with you later. Like you're at least gonna not be a problem for probably 2 turns, and then I'll figure something out eventually.
It's actually a pretty good idea. Yeah, I was gonna say a good idea. Even with this, is like if you can throw something in it, you may not kill it like a jack per se, right? But at the same token, a lot of those jacks you're going to slow down and not have to worry about them for at least a turn, if not turns, before they can actually move back into position or get at you. So that's cool.
Yeah. Or even some war beasts too. Like if you knock them down and if you get to the back edge, like if you happen to throw into the back edge of that, and you're looking at going through, even just 1.5 or 2 inches of the rest of that AOE, like you're killing probably 5 inches of movement. So like they're either having to try and charge at something close by to get out of the terrain feature, or you're looking at them spending an entire turn running to get into position. Not to mention the resource expenses of like spending a focus or using a fury to stand back up again to get your full movement. If they're choosing not to do that, then they're probably like they're either backing away and getting further away to get out of the AoE faster, or they're spending an entire turn trying to walk through it, and then, it's a unique terrain feature that I think makes unique interactions on the table.
Yep.
So the next one that we're going to talk about is the tall grass. So tall grass is a rough terrain feature that provides concealment to small or medium bases completely within its parameter. This terrain feature should be approximately the same size as most forests. And it's unrestricted, so you can put them next to each other. This is a really cool idea. I like the idea of having terrain that benefits non-large or larger base models. I think that's a unique choice. Also, again, gets to change things up thematically, where like if you're out in some rolling hills, highlands, there's probably not that many patches of forest if you want to play something that is strictly really thematic, but there could be some tall grass. This is also really interesting for those prowl solos to proc, where you get into a position in the table and have stealth, but then also not be restricted by the line of sight deprivation that a forest can have or can cause. So it's kind of that double-edged sword that it adds to provide a bit of the concealment for the stealth. You can still see into it, so someone could still charge you, but vice versa, you can still charge out of it very easily. I think this is something that my Gallows Groves are definitely happy to see, because I want to put them into a terrain feature that gives them stealth, but doesn't restrict my line of sight if I want to channel through them. So I think this is a really cool option. I like the idea of a bunch of trolls moving across the table and then like crouching into some tall grass.
Your unit of champions are just hiding in this grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. What's funny is you mentioned a circle. I think Circle would dislike this one because they love forests, right? Like most Circle models, I think, love forests, whereas this isn't going to give them quite the same benefit. That's kind of.
But we don't ignore it for line of sight purposes for the most part, unless you're playing a Devourer's Host list where almost everything has Tree Walker. We don't ignore it for line of sight purposes. So like we don't get to charge out of it. We like it because we ignore the movement penalty and we get the defense bonus, but we don't like it for the line of sight cutting, which can make some weird positioning issues on the table.
Yep. So,
but I think this is also another great option. Let's see. It is still rough terrain, so it does slow down other stuff that doesn't have Pathfinder, which is another nice option. It's also nice to have something that it's a good alternative to Rubble, because Rubble is really great, but it's great because it adds a defensive bonus without restricting your line of sight, but the difference between a +4 and a +2 is very big, and sometimes you don't want a bunch of Rubble, or sometimes people avoid using Rubble because the +4 benefit is really strong.
Yeah, I like it. I see some good parts with it, and again, you can just flip over your forest terrain and call it tall grass, or the forest one. So another feature where you can use it right away to try it out.
Yep. So the last one that we have is Windstorm, which is very unique. I don't think we've had really any other terrain features that were similar to this, except for maybe in some sort of a special scenario. So Windstorm is open terrain. but is represented by a 3, 4, or 5-inch AoE template. When a model completely within the perimeter of a windstorm makes a ranged attack or is targeted by a ranged attack, the attack suffers -3 range. This is unrestricted, so you can put them next to each other, right on top of each other. Again, very unique. It's designed to kind of help melee-centric armies get across the table. At first, when I read this, I was very worried that ranged models would just completely avoid it and stay out of it. And then I continued reading and saw that if you are standing inside of it, you still get the benefit, which I think is important and great, because Windstorm is a spell, or Wind Blast is a similar spell where you put an AoE down on the table, and it basically does the same effect. But it's really easy just to avoid the AoE, and then you're wasting Fury or Focus or something else to something that doesn't really do anything, because it doesn't benefit you if you step into it. Whereas this one still does.
So you should note on this too is it doesn't, as far as I see, it doesn't say that it's a cloud effect, so it can't just easily be dissipated or got rid of.
Right.
And also that if you do the 5-inch windstorm, a huge based model could sit in it and benefit from it. So again, one of the limited terrain features that actually a huge base can benefit from.
Yes.
Right. So now, granted, it'll be the only thing in the 5-inch, but but it can still have that, which is a great way to kind of protect. I mean, and I wonder if this will stack with other things, such as the Storm Raptor. Can it stack all of its minus ranges? You know.
Yeah.
So can you imagine Old Witch 2 standing in the windstorm terrain and casting windstorm?
Right.
Is that a -8 then?
I mean, they're different.
Yeah.
They're different things, right? So basically, you just can't attack her unless you're really, really close for most things. I mean, even range 11s would be 3 inches away.
Yep.
So now, granted, they do say this one should be further up the field, so you're going to be way up there anyway. What, 18 to 20 inches they suggest? So you are fairly close, but yes, if for some reason this table was set back and all of a sudden it's like 14 inches off the table edge or something like that, then you could definitely have some crazy stuff going on.
Yeah. But, I would recommend that people do not do the really obnoxious thing and do not plant this on top of flags or objectives, because that would just be no fun for everyone involved.
Well, the objective would benefit from it. So
yeah.
Now, who's going to be the first person that just puts all these out on the same table?
Oh, I'll do
it. The answer to that is Nathan Kidwell. One of our locals who is known for making very atrocious battlefields from time to time. when he gets the option to put terrain out, he has made some very obnoxious terrain tables. So that's it for all of the terrain. Jeremiah, you want to lead us into the scenario section?
Sure. Yeah. By my count, it looks like all of the existing terrain. Scenarios of the existing scenarios. 3 of them changed, 2 of them stayed the same, and 1 of them was replaced. Yes. And so let's go through just I guess start. I got the 2019 Steamroller packet right here, so let's just go in order. So scenario 1 was King of the Hill, and it has a circle, a 12-inch circle in the center of the board, and in the center of it, a flag, and then it has the 2 rectangle zones on the side. It's affectionately known as Championship Belt, I think. Is this the one?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then on the inside corner closest to you of the rectangle zone on the right-hand side is an objective. And previously, the rectangle zones were right up against the board edge. And what they decided to do with King of the Hill is move them closer to the center by 3 inches. So now
make it look more like a championship belt.
And look even more. Yeah. The champion wrestler has lost weight. And
Yes.
so it's a tighter belt. Yeah. And
we went from sumo to like midweight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it, I think, because when you're so spread out, some forces aren't able to not everyone has ambushing pieces. Not every list has a high model count and with big control ranges and stuff. And so this makes it so that you can focus a little bit more center. I like it too also because it looks appealing. It looks just visually, it looks more appealing on the table than being pushed up all the way up against the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a cosmetic thing for me. I don't really care. I like the scenario in general. It's one that we play a lot.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I do too. One thing I will point out is not all maps that are always played are exactly 4 feet wide, right? Like some of them were 47 or 47 and a half, right? Yeah. So by pushing them in a little bit too is not being on the edge, because some maps aren't 4 feet across, they're 47 inches or 47 and a half, right? And so this gives you that opportunity to kind of compensate for that without really affecting the center. Now, quarter inch, half inch probably didn't matter too much, but it was one of those. And again, my ninja bears still don't care. They'll still charge across and kill stuff. So.
Yeah. I think it's a good change. While the ninja bears can still make the distance, it makes it safer to be able to toe the edge. So because this can only be held by warjacks, ward beasts, and battle engines, and then warcasters, warlocks, bringing them in so that you don't have to try and spread out as far, I think is good, especially for the armies that have difficulty doing that, especially for armies that don't have access to a lot of ranged weapons, where like it feels really bad if you stick a melee heavy in that zone and then it's not doing anything other than destroying the objective and then just sitting there. The other thing too is before, when they were up against the edge of the table, it basically guaranteed that if you put anything in the zone, an ambushing unit was getting to it, period, no matter what. Because 3 inches off the table edge, you've got 9 inches to the other end of the zone, which meant that even if you were outside of the zone, you weren't necessarily safe. You could still get hit.
Yeah.
I think shrinking, and so it made ambush units extremely powerful for denying that zone if you had them. And I remember hearing a couple local people talking about how last year's packet was extremely strong or benefited extremely well to armies that had decent or good ambush units like ninja bears. Yeah. I think bringing them in so that you're stretching a little bit more, you can probably put a medium, you could probably put a light or a lesser in the zone and still control it and not worry about getting charged as easily without some threat extenders. I think it's a good change.
And a huge base can now contest the circle and rectangle.
Yeah.
Whereas before,
which I think is
couldn't squeeze them in.
Yeah. Which I think is fine because there were a couple of scenarios, and I feel like King of the Hill was a scenario where you could score 5 points in a single turn, which is very difficult to come back against if you're playing cautiously because you don't want to walk straight into an alpha, or if you're just slower and a smaller model count. I think being able to contest both of the zones is good and bad. It's good that you can't just lose accidentally in a single turn. But it's also like it's very powerful for people who frequently play huge base models because now you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's a good segue to the next scenario.
Which is bunkers.
Yep.
And bunkers has a rectangular zone on your side, and in the center of the rectangular zone is an objective. And previously, it had 3 flags on the center line, equidistant from each other. And the new change is they removed the center flag. And so you basically have 2 flags on the center line that are offset. And I think this one was a weird one because the potential to score a lot on a turn was there, and you could lose accidentally if you didn't account for all of the flags.
Yeah.
Or if you didn't bring enough solos, you just
or if you
to win.
Yeah. Or if you didn't commit hard enough to protecting those ones.
Yep.
I think
I like
the removal.
change.
Yeah. I think the removal of the center flag will mean that there's a little bit less action in the middle of the table. There's less reason to go towards the middle. The one change that I kind of wish is I kind of wish that the zones were a little bit closer together. Because I believe as they stand, they start 12 inches up the table, and then it's 6 inches. So 12, 12, 24, plus another 12. The 12 inches apart from each other, which can be a very long stretch for some armies that are a little bit slower. Or if you're playing against an army that's got a really solid tar pit midline, is like maybe you're not controlling that flag in the middle of the table, but now you are effectively completely stopping an enemy army from getting to your zone and destroying your objective without having to go all the way around or fight really hard in the middle of the table. And I feel like that can be a little bit... I think that can cause the game to stagnate pretty easily. And I just wish the zones were a little bit just a little bit closer.
Yeah. Inch or two.
Yeah. But then you start the drawback to that is that they're 12 inches up the table, which is like they try to keep a lot of things standard distances of like 12 inches here, 16 inches here. Objectives are usually 15 or 18 inches up. If you move the zones up even by 1 inch, now they're 13, which is kind of a weird number. But I mean, even if you moved each one to 13 inches up and the objective to 16 inches up, now there's only 10 inches between them, and I think that's a little bit more manageable.
Yeah. The third one that got changed is Spread the Net. Spread the Net's kind of funny. It has a circular zone in the center of the board, and then it had 2 rectangular zones on the sides of it, but the one that was on the right-hand side was closer to you. I think 16 inches from your board, and your opponent's one was a lot farther away.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't do the math that fast. Yeah. But then it had, this open space on the opposite quadrant where there is a flag. The biggest change, the only change they really did to Spread the Net is because they wanted to have objectives in all the scenarios, is they put an objective in the center of the rectangle zones.
Yeah.
So makes Spread the Net super hot.
Still. Yeah. Which, as a note, those objectives are 19 inches up and 12 inches in from the right-hand edge of each player's table. Each player's side. So
I think they definitely make them strikeable, and this is the new scenario where you can score those points. Or again, if you can, get a couple flags, the zone, clear an objective through shooting from your flag, ambushing in, all sorts of stuff, right? This one, I think, has now taken over the, what's the word I'm looking for? Where you can score a lot of points. Active. Very, very active scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I think the placement of the objectives can be very helpful for your assault on your opponent's flag.
Yes.
Depending on what objective you take.
Yep.
Yeah. Especially if you take the ammunition one and they stuck an incorporeal model on their flag. Now it's not safe anymore.
Yeah.
I think this is a good addition, especially because if you were a slower army that was having trouble maybe getting into a good position for protecting your zone your opponent can't just clear your zone and then run something in. They also have to deal with the objective. The objective can't be targeted until until scoring starts. So that, I think, is a good scenario that, while it does mean that fast and far-reaching armies that go second can potentially score a lot of points in a single turn, they also have to really overextend, because not only can you just, or do you have to just run something into the zone, you also have to put enough firepower over there to either destroy it in melee, where you're really reaching, or shoot it from afar, in which case you're doing, you're committing a lot of firepower to that side of the board. Where, like, you can score a lot, but it also could potentially stop you from losing, because they have to destroy the objective before they can just run something into the zone and score.
Yep.
The fourth scenario, invasion, is staying the same. So, And
I think that's good.
Yeah. We're going to skip scenario 5. Number 6, recon. It's staying the same. I mean, they're both solid. I mean, and changing everything doesn't make sense. So, keeping some things the same. But anarchy is changing. Anarchy is going away, and it's being replaced by split decision. So split decision is going to have, it's a weird one. It kind of looks like an aerial view of the Starship Enterprise, if you will. You've got you've got the circle zone. Let's say if I'm player 1, the circle zone is going to be off center on the center line to my left, and then the objective and the flags are going to be 18 inches up on my right hand side, and the objective is going to be 12 inches from the edge, and the flag is going to be 16 inches from the edge. And then there's a third flag in the center of the circular zone. So I think split decision came out this last year in some kind of scenario packet, and I don't remember what it was. But Oz and I actually been playing split decision a fair amount of times this last year. And so I'm pretty excited that it's made to the Steamroller packet.
Yeah.
But what are your guys' thoughts on this new one?
I find it kind of interesting, and definitely plays into those 4 inches away from your objective, protecting your flag, right? Terrain, I think, will play huge features in this. Again, you're still ambushing, can still be good. Your flags then, if 18, so that's 36. So again, they're 12 inches apart. So you could kind of still be attacking decently from one objective or flag to the other. Having a flag in the middle of the circle zone kind of adds that element too of getting someone over there. There's no War Beast scoring elements on this.
Yeah, there's no square zones on this one.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if that, maybe help lend to some of those huge melee armies. So I like it. And it really, which side do you kind of favor? How are you going to go after it, right? So I think it'll be in some interesting gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I don't remember if this one was like a proposed scenario in a previous packet that didn't get approved or finalized, or if it was one of the Brawl Machine ones. It's an interesting one. I don't remember from the previous time that we saw it if there was a flag in the middle of the circle zone, but I feel like part of the reason why it got scrapped before was because it was going to be too difficult to try and win by scenario because of the placement of things. In order to score the opposing flag, you have to destroy the objective, which is kind of in a weird spot. It's 12 inches in and, is it 18 inches up? So it's kind of out there on the flank to try and deal with, especially if you don't have a lot of high-powered ranged options. I do like the idea that you can give benefits from your objective to anything that is scoring your flag, which I think is really cool and a great way to kind of leverage some of the unique abilities on the new objectives. At first, by looking at it, because the proportions are weird, I was concerned that the circle and the flags were too far apart for something that was like near the edge of the circle or just outside the circle to try and easily get over to contesting the flags just by like advancing or charging. I was afraid that it was going to have to be a run until I actually measured everything out, and the flags are actually only, I believe it's 10 inches away from the edge of the circular zone. So if you are at the very edge of the circular zone, you can walk 6 inches towards a flag and get within contesting range. Or you can charge and get into contesting range, which I think is an important. I think it's an important feature to it to kind of help add a little bit more balance, but could also slow the game down. It's one of those ones that, like, I feel like kind of like Anarchy is like you have to play it to kind of really see the way that everything positioned on the table affects the flow of the battle, whether it slows things down too much. This is one that is difficult to score a lot of points in a single round. I think you can only score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I guess you can technically score 5 in a single turn, but I feel like if you're scoring 5 in a single turn, and I think if you're scoring 5 in this turn, your opponent is in a really bad position. They either like basically haven't advanced across the board, or they basically don't have anything left.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about this packet, just kind of on the whole for the scenarios, is of the 6, 4 of them have all of the scoring elements. They had at least one of each of the scoring elements. Bunkers does not have the circular zone, and then Split Decision does not have the rectangular zone. And so as an EO, I think it would be fun to, like in a 3-round match, to include one of these. Either one of them would be interesting, because it's gonna, if you don't have units, you need a unit to score the circular zone, and you need your battle group to score the rectangle zone, and then, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, because usually, our local events tend to be 3 rounds, and I wonder how often each one got chosen, and were they all chosen randomly, or were they all chosen by decision? So
it depends. Depends on the mood of the EO. It's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm looking at the previous packet, and it looks like it was actually split in half, where half of the scenarios had all of the scoring elements, and half of them was missing one, because Spread the Net didn't have objectives, and now it does.
Right.
Anarchy didn't have a rectangular zone, now it's gone, and then Recon 2 doesn't have a circular zone.
Yep.
So I think we're either back to the same.
My assessment's wrong, because Recon still exists. So
okay,
3.
so yeah, we're still okay. Yeah, so
it's
we're still
three.
at 3 and
okay.
3. So that's an interesting way.
Yeah, that is interesting. So
yeah, I feel like Split Decision is going to be one of those ones that's going to drive everyone crazy, honestly.
Yeah. When you compare it to the one that it replaced, though, I like it because Anarchy was just so weird to set up. Like, there's just too many weird measurements. With Split Decision, at least it's symmetrical.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot easier to set up. And especially if you accidentally mix up the flag and the objective placement in Anarchy, it makes things really weird.
Yeah, which I've done because because there's no real key, to tell you that the triangles are flags and the circles are objectives. Like, there's nothing really tells you that. I just have to look at a scenario I'm familiar with to remember. Oh yeah, that's That's the flag. So
and that would be some good feedback for PP. Somebody, if someone is actively taking part in this, is because unfortunately I'm just not, because I'm not playing anything. But recommending that they have some sort of like just condensed equivalency key on each of the scenario pages, so that you can look at that one page and see everything that you need to know without having to reference another sheet. Would be very handy. The icons would be super easy, but I think just like a shortened list of the different things that can score each of the elements, I think would be good too.
Yeah, and I would add another feedback piece for the Steamroller packet is developing the terrain page a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because if you look at 2019's packet, it says it has one page dedicated to terrain, page 6. And then it says, unrestricted terrain, dense fog, forest, hills, rough terrain, shallow water, trenches, rubble. Restricted terrain, hazards, obstructions, and obstacles. And there really isn't a whole lot of description beyond that about how that looks on a table. And so are they going to name tall grass, for example, in the packet with a description? Are they going to name open grave? Because that's not in the rule book. They're not in the rule book. So where is a player going to find the rules for these? And I would just like it to be all in one page, or one location. Like if you had the rule book handy, which is also available in the app or whatever, and then if you have the Steamroller packet handy, and that's all you needed to have with you when you go to game night, I think that's a good organization. So, but having to bookmark website pages where there's a description, or go to a forum site to have someone make a ruling or something, but that doesn't make sense. So I said this in the beginning, and I'll say it again. I am excited with the release of the Steamroller packet, because now I want to try some of the new terrain stuff and the new scenarios, and that means that I'm going to want to play games again. So I'm happy.
Me too. And also some of the recent CID changes that happened to some legacy models have definitely made me start looking at and be excited about building some circle lists again, despite the fact that I haven't played a game in a long time. So it's kind of a small aside to that is it's kind of funny that people who know me and have had conversations with me about theme lists and things like that in the past have heard me complain about Secret Masters in Circle, about not being happy with it. And it seems like in a very slow, very roundabout way, it has become one of the strongest theme forces in Circle right now. And it didn't have anything to do with what they did to the theme force or what they allowed. It had to do with all of the other like adjacent models that got altered, or models that became allowed through like Riot Quest releases. But like one of the big things was like Selena and the Nis Hunters got a points change recently, so instead of being 19 points for a max unit, they're 16 points.
That's huge.
And that is huge. That is huge. And now they're a much more viable option. And now it has me digging out my Nis Hunters to get them repaired, primed, and then eventually get them painted.
To get them repaired. I love that you said that. I think everyone's Nis Hunters are broken.
Probably. Except for, I don't know. Oh, man. I don't know if James still has his Nis Hunters or if he pinned them for somebody else. But I'm pretty sure he pinned them for somebody else and did a really good job. And whoever it was that has those Nis Hunters, those things are like never coming apart unless you throw them at a wall.
Nice. Nice. Hey, why don't we transition over to Hobby Desk? What have you been working on?
So this weekend, actually, I dug out a model, or at the end of last week, I dug out a model that I had bought a little while ago, just because I thought it was a really cool model, and I wanted to paint it. I actually got around to painting it. So Runaboard is doing a painting competition. We've announced it in a couple of different places. I've announced it in the Discords, the initial details. We've announced it on our social media. So the idea is that it's a single character model or a single model, 60 millimeter or smaller, must be fully painted. We encourage doing some sort of basing with it if it doesn't already have some, or do extra if it does have some. Has to be fully painted. Submission begins in June, and you have until the end of June to submit a piece. It does not have to be a model that you paint during this time. It can be something you've already painted that you're welcome to submit. You just have to get it in by the end of June. We are supposed to be taking photo submissions, but we haven't hashed out all of the details about that just yet. So if you're interested and you're not necessarily local to us, like if you're in the Salem area, and can't quite get up here to drop a model off and then come back and get it, keep an eye out. We'll make an announcement about photo submissions and things in the future. We also haven't figured out exactly how we're doing voting, but the idea is that it's going to be probably more based off of popular vote rather than an actual critiquing on technique or anything like that. The idea is that we want to encourage people to show off stuff that they've painted that they're proud of. And so I decided which model I was going to do, and I actually did him this weekend. I'm very, very happy with how he came out. I did Sigvald the Magnificent from the Hedonites of Slaanesh that came out recently. He got a model update. That's a fantastic sculpt. It's actually the first model that I've ever painted not fully assembled, because of the way that his capes are and the way that his hair is. It was going to make it very difficult to get to the underside of those pieces and also the back of the model. And I wanted to get a lot of good detail and everything on there. And very happy with the way that he turned out. And I'm looking forward to putting him in the case next month sometime and showing him off. So please don't vote for me just because you know it's my piece. I want you to vote for it because you like it. I'm usually very, very quiet about what model I submitted, because I don't want someone to vote for it just because it's mine. I want them to vote for it because they like it, and I encourage the same for other people. Don't play favorites just because you know the person.
Yeah, it's nice to know. It's nice to look at the piece and not know who painted it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's cool. I haven't been doing much hobbying because I had that time off. Yeah. But I did get a 3D printer, and so I started to set up my space for that and realized that I need to change my space. So I was off by 1 inch. So
I recommend probably putting it in your garage. Don't leave it in your house. If you can. Ventilation. It's very important for 3D printers and resin printers that you have very good ventilation.
I didn't get a resin printer. Printer.
But even 3D printers, like the ventilation of the fumes from the chemicals of it and everything like that, you want it to be in a well-ventilated area. You don't really want to put it in your bedroom. It'll smell bad.
Well, then I might need to make more changes then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it's fun. I kickstarted something over the weekend, so I'll have some STL files to practice how to print. Apparently, so
very cool.
So, but hey, it was a good conversation. Dan had to drop off a little bit, and so we don't get to hear about his hobby progress. But I'm excited to play more games. Just want to put a plug out there for our Discord server. That's where a lot of the action takes place. We have a monthly book club, and this month the book is Shadow and Bone. And if you want to join in, we're meeting this Sunday at 1 p.m. online in one of the chat rooms in our Discord server. And it's awesome. So you have time to do that. You can also just find out.
Got a week to read it.
Yeah, you have a week to read it. So let's see. Our Thursday night, we have Paint Party, which is awesome. And usually when I get most of my hobby done on a week-to-week basis, and something I look forward to, except for when I have to work, which has happened a couple of times recently. But and then you can support our show in a lot of different ways. You can leave us a positive review if you think that we're worthy of it. And then you can also support us through various affiliate links. We have those links on our website, spellstormminiatures.com. And then we have them in our Discord server as well. With that being said, I hope everyone has a good one.
Bum, 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 bum.